Welcome to The Growth Equation. This isn't your typical business podcast. We're keeping it real about the challenges of scaling up, period. I'm Tristan Wright and I've been there. I've built and scaled my own business. I've sold it. I've learned a ton along the way. Now I'm bringing you the no BS stories of founders who are in the trenches right now, navigating that messy middle. We're talking advertising, marketing, design, creative, branding, the whole 9 yards. Doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur or running a team of 100. Everyone's got a secret sauce, that thing that makes them different, better. We're going to uncover it. So grab a coffee and let's get real. Today we're talking to Andrew from Deepstar Strategic. Andrew, welcome.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Good, mate. My pleasure. So I'm going to address the elephant in the room first. Pink.
What about it? What needs addressing?
Well, there's pink glasses, there's pink shirt, pink jacket, but there's not pink shorts.
No, unfortunately. Although my daughter this morning did say I should get some pink tracky dacks and really complete the look. I've always liked pink. Funnily enough, as a young boy, I really liked blue, like cobalt and sky blue. And I don't know what happened and at what point, but it was almost like a switch of, it was pink shirt Tuesday, that was pink shirt every day. And I've got pink socks, pink jacket, pink glasses, pink shirts up the wazoo, and different shades, right? Some of them are salmon, some of them are peach, some of them are candy. I've got pink ties. Yeah, I like it. And it's memorable, right? So
that's the point. That's where I was leaving with it. So you've obviously done it as a recognition strategy for your brand as well.
Look, a little bit. It wasn't initially like that. First off, it started as, I like it. I started my career in tech and then moved into sales and now, go to market and growth. Tech people are boring. The only outlet that we have is the clothing that we can potentially wear. So I tried to choose something that, was different. I do remember years ago, I had a series of interviews for a company, and the final one was with the GM, and I was wearing the pink shirt, pink socks, pink tie. I got the job. I went down to Sydney, and he's like, "So Andrew, what's with the pink?" I'm like, "That's what it is, Max. It's you remembered me." And so look, it has evolved like that, but it certainly wasn't calculated in the beginning.
Yeah. Tell me about Deepstar. Tell me about your business and then your journey as well.
Yeah, look, I have, like I said, I've spent my entire career in tech. I grew up and my parents owned software and technology companies. Dad was the technologist. My mum was the sales and marketing person. So I've always been around that environment. And, I grew my career. I've been in, small business, large business. I've been in the channel. I've been in government. I've been in enterprise. And I've always looked at things through the lens of what is the actual problem, the business impact problem that we're solving. And that's carried me through my, software development to architecture to sales days. Then moved into, that product marketing, go to market side. And that naturally led me because of the, I'm pretty good at that stuff. And so that led me to big US companies and working in the US, from Australia. And so, the scale was huge. That's, really the only place you can get that sort of exposure and work on those big projects and deals and customers. But I'm passionate about Australia. I think that I love Americans. They're awesome, but they struggle with this concept of the rest of the world. And, for all of the different things that people say, we're part of Asia, we're not. Or we're just America, we're not, right? I love our country, our produce, our culture. There's some amazing ideas here. There's some great people. And so I've kind of just been on this journey for the last, 5 years of yes, the biggest market for what I do is in the US. But that's a great place to learn and then bring things here, because while we have great people, we are very isolated. And so, when I look at my kind of passion around, I want great ideas to succeed. I want, local people to win. How can I apply all those things that I've had the opportunities and hard fought, won experiences and apply them here? So that's kind of how Deepstar started, right? That fundamental thing of how can we make sure that great ideas succeed, just as a general thing? How can we kind of take that bent of doing what's needed in the right way, not what is necessarily popular or liked, but the right thing to do to get the result? And, just always with that lens of how can we apply that in Australia and even to a little degree New Zealand, right? So our customer base is definitely split between the two geographies. A lot of what we do is helping the fundamentals everywhere, but with the US, huge market, but they want to expand. A lot of the Australian companies, their market is the US, right? I love this country. It's amazing, but our economy is it's not as big. What I find interesting though is once American companies get to a certain size, they have to go to a bigger market, and that's actually APAC, right? We are naturally positioned to advise and help and have a lot of experiences with, even though like when we're not part of Asia, like geographically, politically, culturally, language, any of that, but we're certainly closer than the West Coast or the East Coast of the US. So that's kind of my journey and reason in a nutshell.
Yeah. When did you set up When did you set up the business as the first time? When was it set up as a one-man band consultancy? Have you employed staff? What does it look like today? What's the journey?
Yeah, good question, right? It's funny because of the thing that I really sell is like getting the fundamentals right and the strategy. That is not how this started at all. It was, I was working full time for the US. Every now and then I'll do, so I often start at 4 a.m. local, which is weird initially because I was always a night owl, and then that switched to mornings. But it's kind of just started of, do a little bit project here, do a project there. And I think it was 2019, I was starting to do a bit more consistently. Obviously, there was the big COVID thing in 2019, and there was more and more, companies. There was an explosion of hiring. There was an explosion of spending. Money was free, with zero interest rate policy and things like that. You could raise $10 million in a Series A for having a picture on a napkin, right? Money was literally washing down the streets in Sandhurst Lane. So from there, it kind of just started with, all right, so I've got my full-time gig and I'm going to do this full-time as well. And for a while, that was me. And then I had some contractors, and then I placed some people, like kind of like an embedded augmentation. We're doing, a lot of project work, and that kind of extended. I took on a partner. We hired some people. There were some disagreements, unfortunately, around how to run a business. And so that partnership dissolved. The market has definitely changed in even the last 2 years. Right. I look at you can't deny that the economy is weird. Like I grew up
very different.
It is very different,
especially in Australia compared to the US as well.
Just everywhere, right? Like we were talking about coming out of COVID with a K recovery of some industries and segments would go up and others would go down. I don't know what letter we're in, but it's a squiggle, right? Depending on there's no consistency. There's a lot of uncertainty. Certainly the monetary and fiscal policies of different governments is not helping. Labor force issues. And, the impact of AI is real. I do think that the perception of what AI can do is much further advanced than the reality. But there's definitely some massive productivity gains of whether that's, it's certainly lifting the floor of those that are, middling to being much better. I think it's extending the really good, and it's definitely cannibalizing and eating away at that bottom part of the market so it's really difficult for people with no experience. But with, money's now expensive, comparatively to 5 years ago. Historically, it's still relatively cheap, but people only care about last quarter. So money's more expensive. Definitely people overhired during COVID, specifically in the tech sector. That's really tough. There's a lot more fractional people.
In the sector, you couldn't find staff and the wages just went through the roof.
Right. It was like, I remember I was doing contracting back in the 2000s, and literally, you could finish a contract or, get the shits and walk out, on Tuesday afternoon and walk into a new job on Wednesday morning, right? Like there was just money everywhere. There were projects. That's not the case now. Like, during COVID, yes, the problem was really fueled by free money because people were not working in the office. Companies recognized that, there's a whole labor force outside of my city. I could talk to them. They seem to have forgotten that. And because of the free money, they raised a lot of money, and this combination of ZIRP, of zero interest rate policy, and GAC, of growth at all costs, like the 2012, 2015 Silicon Valley playbook, they just acquired fake growth, right? And there was no approach to profitable economic growth, so like PEG, and it was just unsustainable. Like, you could see that. And this is the challenge that I've always had of, and kind of the dichotomy about Deepstar and its roots, right? That there's doing the right thing and there's doing what is working now, right? Like, you can rail against, this is stupid, it's unsustainable, we're spending $5 million a quarter and getting a negative return. Why would we do that? But the money's there, and when the metrics are measured and you're judged on performance like that, well, then, like, you have to play the game. Like, that is the business world. As much as everyone goes, yeah, this is unsustainable, this is stupid, but like, it's like that tsunami, you can't fight it. The good thing, though, is there was definitely a large portion of the market that thought that was the right thing and the answer. The problem for them now is that is not the case, and they don't know how to solve that. For those of us, and I'm certainly not alone, of, what are those first principles? What are the base foundational things of what drives acquisition and growth and expansion, right? Like, we focus solely on B2B, tech and SaaS. And so, that's a fairly predictable, well-known business model of how you grow and measure success. It is being impacted now. Like, we're switching from ARR, and to, as pricing models changed, things like consumption or task-based or outcomes, like the way in which we collect and measure financial progress is changing. So from bookings to billings, like the hybrid model. So ARR is changing. And I look at, there's a lot of commentary and research about this. It might have taken 5 years to go from 0 to 10 mil, whereas now I can do that in months with these AI native companies. And that's insane. Now, the next question is that sustainable? Well, we don't know yet, right? It's certainly a hotly contested market with lots of players. There will absolutely be some massive losers, and there will be some acquisitions and consolidations. Whether the first movers win, generally not, but we'll see.
Yeah. And what it's really interesting, how you're talking a lot about what's happening in the US market, and then what's happening in the Australian market is specifically like medium, smaller businesses. Like, we're seeing what's happening over there, but there's just not spending happening here at the moment as well. So it's
that's everywhere, right? Like, there are definitely places that spend. And I even look inside of a business, and sales, like, if I think about the different functional teams, sales seems to be more immune to budget constraints. And often that's because of political power. Marketing is always under pressure to show ROI, but they've got these massive tech stacks. I do find it funny that I come from tech, and I am definitely not bought into, I need this massive, complicated, integrated tech platform to get stuff done. I think a lot of it is a waste of money. Won't name names. But, in terms of like Australia, those underlying economic realities are still there of, it's more expensive here. We are a long way away from anywhere. Labor is, comparatively expensive. The cost of employees is high. We're seeing this emerging metric of efficient growth of, revenue per employee. And that's really, it is being driven by AI. We're seeing this massive fight at the minute, both in the US and here, about return to office. And look, I get it. If I've spent a bunch of capital on offices, then I want people in the office. But there's also this massive generational fight between, I don't know what you call them, Zennials, like that, the 80s to the Gen X, where they for those that are in leadership, they've worked the way they've worked. And then you get the younger generations, and they're like, you know what? I don't buy into this concept of I work for a company for 10, 15, 25 years. I don't buy into the concept of you own my life. Like, come 5 o'clock, like, that's it. That's all you're paying me for. That's not unfair, right? Like, otherwise it's indentured servitude and, we're slaves. And so there is definitely an element of previously, before the work from home, wave from COVID, of companies had total control, right? You were reliant on them. They owned you. Now people have kind of had this epiphany of, well, I can do the washing. I can order the groceries. I can go to the gym in the afternoon. I can pick up the kids. I don't need to sit in traffic for an hour and a half each way, twice a day, to go and sit in an office where Frank is flirting with, accounts, and people keep walking past my desk, bumping everything, and, oh, knock, knock, Andrew, have you got 2 minutes? And, yes, there are people that need to be managed. It's always going to be the case, but the good people are far more productive outside. So there's definitely that big fight happening in the Australian economy, or workforce. We kind of do follow the American, like, they sneeze, we catch a cold, was, the saying that I grew up with. And so it's interesting that from a technology adoption perspective, we adopt technologies much faster than the US, right? Like the whole concept of credit cards without the clack machine, or
it was hardly used over in the US.
Well, the clack is still used, right? And I think it's largely because they've got so many back. But that touch to pay with a credit card or with your phone, yes, in the major metropolitan areas, you go to San Francisco, Boston, New York, that's common. But then you've got other things like cloud adoption. Our penetration here is far greater than the US. I look at like our big corporates, you look at the banks, you look at Telstra, you look at Rio, the amount of workloads that they are running, like, as a percentage of their IT infrastructure and business in the cloud, is significantly higher than the US. Like, that's a massive difference in economics and in business process, in how it impacts their business model. All right. So there's a lot of differences there. Again, the US largely doesn't recognize or isn't aware of those differences. They think it's the same, right? I do think part of that, why we adopt so much, is, we are a smaller economy, we are a smaller workforce. You look at CBA and Telstra, comparatively, they are big companies on the global stage. Like, they're not small, but the rest of the country, outside of mining and resources, is kind of a rounding error in terms of GDP and capital worth. So, it's easier for us to move faster. Yeah. I see that, teams are definitely smaller, right? There is this play of, how can I get more for less? I prefer to, what is it? Like, people talk about, like, I want to do more with less, right? Or I want to get a multiple, right? Like, don't do more, just do better, right? Rather than having all these people sitting there being busy, right? Now I can start to think about, okay, what things do I actually do? And it is funny, like, we're now back talking about SOPs because we're talking about workflow automation, right?
Totally.
It's the fundamentals, right? Like, what drives the activity that gets us the results that we want? So, yeah, look, from an Australian perspective, yeah, it's interesting that I still maintain really strongly, like, I am religious about, you must be informed and know your buyer better than they do, right? First party insights, if you can get zero party, that's even better. There is so much commoditization today. It is, the barriers to entry in any business are almost non-existent, right? Like, if I am not burdened by technical or commercial debt, like a great example is Tesla. One of the reasons they were able to scale is they didn't have this massive network of distributors that they needed to give stock to and pay money to, as opposed to, GM, right? So, like, that sort of business model change, where if I can get talent anywhere in the world, if I can get, like, if I'm building software as an example, or even some of the manufacturing, it's much easier and cheaper. And especially with AI now, I can go and copy large category leading companies. I can have something up in hours, right? Yeah. Now, it's not a full commercial product, but it's not that hard. And if your business model is to just clip away at the bottom of a market, and you're not really looking to win total market share, there's a lot of money to be made. So, it's disruptive. So you need a story that makes you stand out. You need to be able to leverage proprietary data for both product and GTM. And you need a modern go-to-market that is holistic, led by the CEO that touches product, marketing, sales, and customer success, and they move together. And I call this buyer-led growth, but it's about transfer of conviction. Never before, I think, have we had this issue where like there's so much sameness. There is so much that is identical. Literally, you can go and change the logos on websites, and the own company couldn't tell the difference, right? Like this sea of sameness and the conformity of SaaS, right? In terms of my world. And so you need a story and you need to have conviction and belief. Like, fundamentally, sales is about transferring that, and that's been forgotten. And so companies that are winning are doing those three things.
Yeah. It used to be like Chinese brands would just copy someone else's front end and look different. But now, because it's so easy to get to market, you look so much like your competitor. And unless you've got that brand story and unless you know your target audience, you're just going to be same.
Absolutely. Like there are some German, I don't know if they're brothers or friends, but they saw eBay come out and they made their own. Then they tried to sell it to eBay and they went, no, they're now bigger than eBay in Germany. And that's their business model. They go and copy the business model of US giants and they localize it in Germany.
Yeah, wow. I'll use my first business. The barrier to entry was higher than it is now. So it was a custom sportswear brand. And
nice.
I was the first Australian brand to be manufacturing custom products out of China. So all of the other custom sportswear brands, like that were Australian owned, were manufacturing in Australia. And that was because the barrier to entry was so difficult. Like you couldn't find a supplier online unless you spoke Mandarin or Cantonese and could read. The only way typically was to go over to Canton Fair and find a supplier. So I worked out, I found my suppliers. I was maybe 3 years ahead of the curve. And today you can set up that same brand overnight kind of thing and be manufacturing products within 2 weeks. So
there's whole businesses where that is their business, is helping other businesses do that now. Like it's crazy. Like there are definitely some benefits to globalization. You can't argue with that. The flip side is that it does impact in some respects the hands, that make things, the boots on the ground kind of thing. But, I look at our manufacturing sector, it's almost non-existent now. Like we don't make stuff. And there's lots of reasons for that. Like it is weird. We have so many of the resources. Why aren't we doing that? Like we sell our iron to, China, they make steel and it comes back and we buy it back for 3 times the price. That's economically stupid.
Yep.
But, our labor costs and like you've got the businesses and the unions and the government were all party to that disaster. But logistics are expensive here. Like fuel is exorbitant. Then that's before you even start looking at tax. Like the excise is almost 50% on fuel. That's insane. So
fuel costs in Australia is 3 times that of what it is in China. Yet the oil comes from Australia that is used in China. So
riddle me that, Batman.
The oil has to go all the way over to China to be used, processed, whatever.
Yep, refined. Yep.
And refined, yes. And then it's still it could stay in Australia. We could refine it here, but no. It's
And then for all the talk about, the environment and, emissions, imagine like not just the risk, but I've got to load it onto all those massive tankers, the time. It's inefficient, right? I get the supply chain, that totally. But, you look at Ship It as an example. They do software, like they're an Australian SaaS company. They make software that helps orchestrate that last mile of delivery. They don't do that, but that is such a difficult market. It's one thing to move things between cities. It's another to get it to my door.
Yeah.
But then, like on the flip side, like I took my car in for a service, a couple of months ago. I got this call about, just checking. Did you come in with your wing mirror broken? I'm like, no. And it was the driver's one, right? So you would know, like you can't drive without it. And so they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll fix that. I'm like, okay, cool, not a problem. You go to pick it up, and they're like, yeah, it's going to be 3 weeks. I'm like, where's it coming from? Korea? Like, and they're like, no, Melbourne. I'm like, I can literally get on a plane today and have it back this evening. Why is it taking 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Like, there's no road train or plane that takes that long, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. It's often like I can get stuff from China faster than I can get stuff from Brisbane.
Oh, look, I've bought laptops like Apple Macs and they've come from Shenzhen. It'll take 3 days. I buy something locally and it takes a week. I'm like,
Yep.
It's a week.
Oakley delivers, ships everything out of Shenzhen. So this beanie I ordered on a Monday evening. I had it on Thursday morning.
Yeah.
So, and that came out of Shenzhen. It cost me $24 to get an Oakley beanie delivered.
Yeah.
So that's product cost, inclusive of shipping. So
well, like,
I couldn't
how
get
do you argue with that, right? You go down to your local Oakley store, it's going to be $50 and you had to leave the house.
Correct. And that's literally what it was. The retail price was in the store was $49.
I know my market.
Yeah. Online, it was cheaper. So,
well, bricks and mortar is expensive.
Yeah.
But
I want to go back to
international shipping would have been more expensive, but apparently not.
Yeah. Oh, well, wait. I want to go back to a point where we're talking about smaller teams. About 5 minutes ago, I'm seeing a trend that big corporate are wanting to work with smaller businesses as opposed to medium enterprises. What are you seeing around there?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like broadly, I think I'm seeing a mirror of that. There's definitely a rise of the fractional, which is, a new sexy way of saying contractor. And partly that's driven by people wanting a bit more flexibility and freedom and the tech layoffs and things like that. There is, I think, certainly in the services business, the big challenge that companies, and like this goes both ways. I understand it. Like I've been in-house in tech and I've been, and marketing, and I've now been an agency for both or provider. The customer wants flexibility and speed, and the agency or the reseller, the integrator service provider, they want to make sure that they're protecting risk and allocating resources. But this massive overhead of process and change requests and things like that, it's a killer, right? Like, and that's just the process before you even get to paperwork. Yeah, it's a killer. Those that are getting stuff done are those that move fast, they're lean. Like I look at this in terms of like how I work with remote teams. Like I've been working effectively remote since about 2016. Like I was, when I was at Red Hat, I was a salesperson. I looked after a lot of APAC, but I had some global influence. And I ended up like traveling 70% of the time. And, you're not in the office and you're not having like face-to-face meetings with people, and you're working across so many time zones. So you need ways to unblock stoppages. So how can we work asynchronously? How can we make sure that we communicate the right information so that someone in Tel Aviv or in Boston, when I'm allegedly sleeping, can pick that up and run with it without having to have a meeting to talk about it? And so, big teams, right? Like I was working with this large Fortune 500, and my God, like there's whole teams there where all they do is just move stuff through the company. Right? They've got a functional title, but they don't do any of that. And personally, I couldn't do that, but like they're just wheel greasers. And I don't mean that meanly or in a negative way, but that's what was required to get stuff done. Like you want to go and run an event, you want to run a webinar, you want to publish a blog, you want to go and run a sales event with a partner. Like there's so much overhead. And so, definitely I think the appeal for smaller teams is because you can move faster. There's less red tape. Definitely, like from our perspective, there's done for you, done with you, done, inside you. That sounds terrible. But like that traditional, scoped project definitely exists, right? We do that. There is that, we'll teach you that doesn't seem so popular, like that workshop enablement. Every now and then, like people are like, we just want to run a messaging workshop. Right? Okay, cool. Here's how you do that. And we'll facilitate the process. Off you go. But more and more, it's you've got expertise, and certainly the way that we are organized, that you'll have someone like inside your team, like they've got access to your systems, that they're a member of your business, but you've also get like the backing of the other people that we have, right? And so you might get someone that's really good at performance marketing, which is not something that we generally do. But it's, like, how do I translate all that product stuff into campaigns? So, okay, cool. But to do that, you also need to know the story and the psychology of messaging and things like that. And, you can't be an expert at everything. And even with, we've got more access to information and readily available, accessible access now than ever before. Like, that's nice, but you still need to know what question to ask and how to interpret the answer. So, I think there's part of that appeal is that kind of hidden multiplier scale behind the front person, as opposed to, certainly in large agency, and I see this a lot in US agencies, like you'll get on a call and there's 6 people. There'll be a project manager, an account manager, there'll be, some senior person, there'll be a strategist, and then there'll be the one person who actually does the work that never speaks. Like, what do you all do? I'm paying for this, right?
Yeah, it just doesn't there's a lot of bloat.
Yeah.
And that's effectively what Elon Musk and Donald Trump were attempting to do, is to get rid of that bloat. Whether or not we like them or not.
Yeah, I did a lot of work in Queensland government. Like I was at Queensland Police for a while, about a year, and I must have rewritten the same design document 3 times, and I'm like banging my head against the wall, like, what a waste of taxpayer money. But everyone is terrified of, another Fitzgerald corruption inquiry. So, I get you need more oversight and governance in public service because you are not spending your money, you're spending my money. Absolutely agree with that. But it's designed deliberately so that there's no accountability or tracking of decision making. Then I went to Queensland Health and wow, Queensland Police is a well-oiled machine. I've never seen anything more efficient. Health, I was there during the payroll debacle and helped fix some of that. Like, that was insane. We were rolling out this new email and identity system, like massive project. It was probably about $100 million program across everything we were doing. I was leading the identity piece and we needed to touch every single PC. They had, at the time, around 80,000 employees of varying engagements, full-time, part-time, contract, and about 40,000 like Windows devices. We needed to touch every single one. And I'm like, all right, this is going to be a nightmare. All right, change advisory board. You tell me what you want me to do. I'm not going to argue. This is going to be so hard. Whatever you want, give it to us. And so they did. And, we came back, 3 or 4 months later and went, okay, cool. We've got all of the sign-offs and approvals and we've done everything. It's tested. Every duck is lined up. I sat around I sat in that meeting looking at all the faces around the table and they were just in shock. And I kid you not, the change leader at the time went, we didn't expect that you'd get all that done. We're going to need to start again and change the process.
What?
Now, I was a contractor and I lost my biscuits, right? I went ballistic and we didn't change the process and we rolled out what we had agreed. But what a waste of money, right? So there's my war story. Absolutely mental, right? Professionally, of course, but yeah. Right? Like, oh my God.
What's a piece of advice that you would give to other business owners? Like, so something that you, from a behind the scenes thing, something that you wish you knew previously. What advice would you give to others?
I don't know if it's something that I wish I knew earlier. Definitely, you need to be close to your customer, right? Like, maybe this is a better way. 2 thoughts. You don't want to be data-driven. You want to be data-informed. The only way to do that is you need to meld like first-party insights, research, words from your customer, where do they hang out? What do they do? What motivates them? What's their life like? What do they actually do? Why does that matter? What happens when that doesn't work? What happens when it does? What's the personal risk and reward for them? Like all of that stuff, and match that with, experience and a little bit of intuition, which grows over time. And you need to, like, I've been pushed my entire career, whether it's in tech or, sales or marketing, to specialize. And there are definitely advantages to that. The challenge though is eventually whatever that thing is will move on. Like if I'd built my career around specific technology vendors, yes, they were the gold standard. That's where all the money was made then, but it's dead now, right? And so while individuals can definitely, reinvent themselves and learn new things, I find that hiring managers and companies don't seem to recognize or respect that. And that makes it really difficult. I've always been like, people talk about like a T-shaped skill set. I'm much more like a U. I am very deep in some things, right? Like I'm definitely better at some things than others, but I'm really good at a bunch of stuff without being an expert. And I've got a good enough understanding that I know who to talk to, or, when someone's trying to pull a fast one, that has definitely been a challenge where people want the specialist, right? I want that level 400 person. You're only a 300, or you've been doing this thing like that's adjacent. I'm like, yes, but the skills are transferable. That said, I have done really well in my career and I've worked in some really big projects, big companies. It's harder, but it's longer lived, right? And so, regardless, like, we talk about this in marketing at the minute. Like if you're an in-house marketer, the best thing that you can do for your career is understand the business financial metrics, not the functional skill outputs that you do, right? Like, let's be really specific about, I'm running a campaign and I get clicks and click-through rate and I get ROAS. Cool. Awesome. Irrelevant. No one cares. Doesn't make a lick of difference. What is the revenue impact that has? What impact to EBITDA does that have? What impact to revenue per employee does that have? When you start thinking about what business impact your activities have, you will definitely, in many cases, kind of like hit that ceiling where likely your manager doesn't, and you'll get pushed back and it'll be hard. And you're probably not going to get promoted in that business where you learn those things, but it gives you the next two jobs for your career progression. So they're the two things, right? Like, be closer to your customer than anyone else, know everything about them better than anyone, and have that mix of data and intuition, and be middling deep wide.
Love it. Andrew, it's been a pleasure today. If people want to get in touch, what's the best way to connect?
I spend most of my time on LinkedIn. So it's just, LinkedIn/in/Andrew Hatfield, Andrew at deepstarstrategic.com. You can Google me and find my phone number. So, I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Don't write my name down for a good time. But yeah, look, always happy to have a chat. Like, I do a lot of work in the product marketing community. I'm happy to help a professional that wants to do better at your job, like just that sort of stuff. Obviously, if you're wanting to do more around go-to-market transformation and efficiency, that's bread and butter.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Good one.
Thanks.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning into The Growth Equation. If you've enjoyed the show, hit that subscribe button and leave a review. It helps us big time. Catch you next time. And if you want more, head over to evolvetogrow.com.au for show notes and exclusive content.